have the pages and the lecture notes right off the bat, 74. Today we're going to finish the anatomy of the male reproductive system with, after we do this histology, with the structure of the penis, the erectile tissue, and the skeletal muscle associated with it. And then we're going to move into physiology, so the hormones that control, and back to that spermatogenesis, so the chromosomal changes that occur with meiosis. Then we'll take a break and have a little bit of lab time, maybe half an hour or so, have the quiz.
Is it 30?
And come back and start female. Okay? So kind of that schedule during the morning. So seminal vesicle or seminal gland, either term is appropriate, is, remember that organ that adds the nutrients that the mitochondria of the spermatozoa can use for quick synthesis of ATP without going through a lot of the glycolytic reactions. So citric acid and fructose. It has clotting agents, fibrinogen, and the fibrinolysin, which breaks down the fibers back into their proteins, single individual proteins, and some antibiotics and some prostaglandins. Then remember, it joins with the sperm to form this common pathway. So there are two ejaculatory ducts. Each antula and seminal vesicle come together to form an ejaculatory duct that enters into the prostate gland. When we look at the histology of the seminal vesicle, when we look at female reproductive histology next week, it's going to look very similar to the oviduct. The oviduct is the tube that the egg passes through on its way from the ovary to the cavity of the uterus. And I will bring this up again when we get to the oviduct, but they have these long folds of epithelium and connective tissue. They will have that appearance. In the oviduct, there are going to be columnar cells with cilia that help to sweep the egg away. From the low power view, you're not going to be able to see this. So the easiest way to differentiate between seminal vesicle and oviduct is if you look at each of these small regions formed by the folds. It's like trying to, who's that guy that you find on the cereal boxes?
Where's
Red
Waldo?
hat.
Where's Waldo?
Yeah, where's Waldo? Well, poor Waldo couldn't get in out of any of these mazes. So you'll see that here, I can go there, but then I'm stuck. I can't follow any particular maze pathway to get to the true lumen. Whereas in the oviduct, you can. Okay? So at first glance, they almost look identical, but then if you look closer, you can see there's a difference in that arrangement. So here's the oviduct. And you can see that even when it looks complicated in its folding, you can actually find a way to get through all of that maze and enter the free lumen. Okay, the prostate gland, its secretion's a little bit more milky. It also has antibiotics and some neutralizing factors. There are multiple ducts for the prostate gland. All right, so when we look in the urethra, this is the tube that goes from the bladder out to the external opening of the penis. And it has three regions. So where it passes through the donut-shaped structure of the prostate gland, it's called the prostatic urethra. And it has multiple openings for the channels of the prostate secretions. The prostate gland has larger cells that are swollen with carbohydrates, and so they have this more connective tissue around the area, and the cells are whiter, more lightly colored because of their content. So then we go look at that, and then go back to the seminal vesicle. So you look at this higher power view, it doesn't have that milky storage appearance that the seminal vesicle does. Plus, there's a lot more connective tissue in between the secretory cells. Now the prostate gland can undergo hyperplasia on its own, but because it has a urethra without being a cancer, in other words, just the cells getting larger instead of multiplying, but because the urethra passes through the center of that, it can affect the flow of urine. Okay? So you can have an enlarged prostate gland without actually having prostatic cancer. If it is an enlarged prostate gland or prostatic cancer and they want to remove some of the prostate tissue for that, back maybe 20 years or so ago, that was a problem because of nerves that passed very close in proximity to the prostate gland to the penis. And so a male could end up with impotence, unable to have an erection due to damage to those nerves. They use different procedures now. That's not as common an occurrence. About 5 years ago, my dad had a kidney stone, actually in the ureter, not in the kidney. And typically, kidney stones are broken down by ultrasound, kind of pulverize it so it's more sand-like, and you can pass it in the urine. They might have you go to the bathroom into a sieve to make sure it's passed, put like a little hat inside the toilet. Well, when my mom took him to the emergency room, instead of using ultrasound, and I don't know if he had a different, kidney stones could be formed of different kinds of components. Some are cellular, some are more mineral. They passed an instrument up through his urethra, through his bladder, up into the ureter, and pulled it down. Well, they sent him home and told him to drink 2 gallons of fluid a day. So that night, he was in so much pain he couldn't sleep, but he kept drinking. He couldn't go to the bathroom except in dribbles, but he kept drinking. And they've since moved to Tennessee, but their house was, the house that they were in then was about a quarter mile from the road. He spent the entire night walking up and down their driveway. The next day, my mom took him back to the emergency room, and they put in a catheter to drain, and he went to see his physician, and the guy said, well, you've got an enlarged prostate. We're going to have to do that router-rooter kind of surgery where we remove some of the prostatic tissue to allow the urethra to expand. And Dad, have you had these symptoms before you had your kidney stone? Were you waking? It's a nice conversation to have with your dad. You've been waking up in the night and going to the bathroom a lot? And he said, no. And I said, well, you just had surgery, you know, removing the stone. To have this occur right after, I don't think you have an enlarged prostate. My younger sister, who was working as a surgical nurse, said, oh, we see this all the time. Older men come into he was probably about 78 at the time, older men come into the hospital for surgery and they find they have this enlarged prostate. I said, no, I said, go see a different urologist. Well, all the urologists, 10 of them in town, have all their offices in one building. And he said, if I tell this guy I don't believe them, they're all going to band together and they're not going to believe me. I said, well, you've got good insurance, go to a different town. 20 minutes from another town, go see a different doctor. You can go see whoever you want. So about 2 weeks later, he calls me up. He goes, guess what? It wasn't an enlarged prostate. It was the trauma from the instruments, causing swelling and inflammation. He said, I was talking to my next door neighbor who's a nurse, and she told me I should go see a different doctor. So I did. And I'm thinking, you're not a prophet in your own town or something. But it was just the inflammation and swelling that narrowed that pathway down. And his problem was he kept doing the drinking part. And the pain, there just wasn't, the bladder just kept getting larger and larger and wasn't able to pass through. So it's because of that nature of the prostatic urethra. Now, it's the most narrow portion of the urethra is right here where it passes through the external urethral sphincter. Now, you may not have covered this in Bio 430. We did, and we'll look at it again today, plus some other muscles I said we would wait until this particular unit. The last gland is found just below that muscle. You can see it on this image right here. About a small pea size, there's actually 2 of them, and it sends it stuck into the spongy urethra, the penile urethra. And while this is considered emission, all the others, emission is their secretions going to the urethra, and then we call it ejaculation when the sperm moves through. Well, vulvar urethra, when it does its emission, it does pass through the urethra because it functions to flush out any residual urine, not because urine has bacteria in it, because in the urethra it should be sterile. coming from your kidneys, it's sterile. But because of pH, it would be unhealthy for the sperm, and then lubricates the tip of the penis. So we don't have histology for that one, so the two histology structures are just for the prostate and the seminal vesicle. All right, so movement of sperm through the vas deferens and into the urethra would be, I just told you, emission. All right. So this first diagram of the penis is probably the most confusing, but it's one that many textbooks use. If you think back to Bio 430 and when you learned relationship terms, remember we talked about superior and inferior and dorsal and ventral relationships? And in the distal and proximal distal kind of structures. And we related this back to talking about animals that have four-legged and have a horizontal component. And so in a horizontal component, the back of the animal is dorsal to its abdomen. And the abdomen is ventral to the back. So we related that to our feet. Instead of calling the top of the foot superior to the bottom of the foot, we use the term dorsal and ventral to dorsal, right? So the penis is identified as an erect structure. And so rather than hanging it in this position where it's anterior and posterior, its components are related as in an erect position, and we talk about dorsal and ventral. Okay? So this surface of the penis here would be the dorsal surface. And on that surface, in cross-section, we have the dorsal nerves of the penis, the dorsal vein of the penis, the dorsal arteries of the penis. Okay? There are actually three bodies or corpora of the penis. Two of them are dorsal and one is ventral. So in the relationship, if I were to use my thumb and fingers for the two dorsal structures, they have their origin from the side of the pubic angle. Remember what we call these bony processes? The bone back here, the more posterior part of the pelvis is what region? What bone? Ischium. Okay? And this one up here is the pubis. And they both form the obturator foramen. Remember that? And they're components that form the arms, if you will, of the obturator foramen. What's our word for arm? The arm of the mandible? Ramus. All right. So down at this region we have the ischioramus, and up here we have the inferior and superior pubic ramus. So the origin of the crus of the origin of the corpora cavernosa is the crus, and it is attached to the ischial and inferior pubic rami, right along here. So if my thumbs are the portions of that erectile tissue that attach to the bone, then it would be like this, kind of at an angle, because we have the pubic angle. And then the two erectile bodies come together like this. So these would be the two dorsal structures, and the thumb would be attached to the bone. Okay. This is what we're going to model, by the way, with clay. So if you haven't bought your 4-color clay, we're doing that modeling on Tuesday, after we've covered female structures, and we can do it for both, because they have almost identical components. So let me illustrate a little bit better, because I said this can be a confusing appearance. So this is, sorry for the shocking picture of this building in the morning, this size. But this is from Netter, reproductive region. So this is obviously a male on his back. Usually they're only in this position if they're going to have hemorrhoid surgery. You often see them in this position. This structure right here is the ischial tuberosity. Remember the origin of the hamstring muscles, that bony process that we sit on. Okay? And so here you can see that seam line that I was talking about, when the two labia, that would be a female structure, fuse, and the scrotum is fused together. So that forms that seam line. And now we'll remove the skin and look at these structures in layers. So the skin is removed, and the fascia over the muscle is removed. So remember, we're back to that pubic angle again. And Here is the base of the penis, and our erectile, this is erectile tissue, this is erectile tissue, and we have two sets of muscle that cover that erectile tissue. We'll come to that back in a minute when we talk about regulation of this. So we remove the muscle and remove the fascia, and now we see the actual erectile tissue. So what do we mean by erectile tissue? When the penis undergoes an erection, there is an increase in blood flow. That's what Viagra does. It increases the blood flow to this tissue. And the arterioles dilate. Increased blood flows into the spaces, and as the arterioles dilate and expand, they compress the veins. So the penile, we're talking penile veins, not testicular veins, so we're not looking at the tympaniform plexus, all right? Penile veins, when they're compressed, they're the only way that blood can leave the penis. So with the expansion and dilation of the arterioles and the compression of the veins, we have increased blood flow that is stuck and stays in the penis, and that results in the increased size and length and the erection. So the arterioles have to relax in order to become smaller in diameter for blood to leave. Okay? So the base of these two bodies is this structure right here attached to the ischial rami. So let me diagram that on the board. I'm going to erase this black line here in a moment, but I just want to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So this would be the ischial tuberosity. Pubic angle, all right, pubic symphysis, obturator framing. So we're going to diagram this as if the penis was erect, so that it's not this way but up this way, and we can see its ventral surface. So this portion of erectile tissue that is attached to the ischial and inferior pubic rami, the bony component, is known as the crus of the penis. We're talking about both of them together. The plural term is crura. So crus of the penis, and then where it's no longer attached to the penis, the two of them come together. I'm sorry, where it's no longer attached to the bone, it's free of the bone, then this is known as the corpora cavernosa. Okay? So where it's free of any bony attachment to the rami, it's corpora cavernosa. Singular is corpus. Plural, corpora cavernosa. But we're looking at the ventral structure, right? Because it's in the erect position. Now the rest of the shaft of the penis is formed centrally here by an enlarged bulb. And the bulb is ventral. And we have just one body. That's what you're seeing right here. So just corpus. Spongiosum. Now the corpus spongiosum expands to form this mushroom-like cap that covers over the tip of the corpus cavernosa. Maybe I'll put that in there as a dotted line so we still see it. So that tip, a mushroom-like cap that is the corpus spongiosum expansion, is known as the glans penis. That's the most sensitive, has the highest concentration of sensory neurons. So if we look at the penis in cross-section, remember this is dorsal and this is ventral. So this is all that erectile tissue, the blood vessels which can dilate and expand the renal arterioles to fill up with blood. It kind of has a monkey face. And this is dorsal. The smaller corpus spongiosum is what contains the urethra. So that's why the urethra, when it's in the penis, can be called either the penile urethra or the spongy urethra. Okay? If you call it the spongy urethra, then it helps you remember it's the cavernous, the corpus spongiosum that contains the urethra. For a long time, I had trouble because corpus cavernosa, caverns were wide spaces, the urethra was a wide open space, and I kept wanting to mix those two up. Okay? And finally, when I just stuck with spongy urethra, it helped. So then up here, we have a single dorsal vein, 2 dorsal arteries, and 2 dorsal nerves. This is a frontal section. And so here you see just a little bit of the crus. In our models, in a sagittal view, you're not going to see the crus, all right, because it's lateral and they're cut sagittally. But you can see the corpus cavernosa. So in this view, let me go to a sagittal view of the whole male reproductive. So here we can't see the crus because it's going behind the screen. But here is the bulb. And this structure right here is the corpus spongiosum expanding to form the glands. And up here we have one of the corpora cavernosa. Now you'll notice it's divided into septi. Ever heard of a broken penis? Human penises don't have bones. So when you have a boner, it has nothing to do with the bony structure. Whales do. There are some mammals that have bone in their penis, but this can break with trauma the connective tissue bands that create septi. If you want some amusing, painful reading, just go online and look up broken penis. You'll be amazed at the things people do. Like jumping from a couch 10 feet and trying to ensure that the penis passes into the woman's vagina and hitting her pubic bone instead, resulting in a broken penis. I don't know what happened to the pelvic bone. So when that connective tissue ruptures, the penis, instead of being erect like this, is erect like that. Bends over to one side. Okay. And connective tissue can take a while to heal. So they have to be careful when they urinate because the stream is going to go off sideways. So what we're seeing here again is corpus cavernosa, dorsal, bulb of a penis, and corpus spongiosum, and glans penis ventral. Now let's go back to the Netter diagram and look at the muscle. So remember, this is the crus of the penis attached to the ischial and inferior pubic rami. So I'm going to I'm going to diagram in a muscle on one side that covers that. It just covers the crus. So that muscle is the ischiocavernosus muscle. skeletal muscle innervated by the pudendal nerve. Do you guys remember pudendal nerve from 430? What plexus did it come from? Lumbar or sacral? Sacral. So that skeletal muscle, erection, all right, is a parasympathetic event. We'll talk about it a little bit. Parasympathetic nerves cause normally it's sympathetic that does all the time, other than in this. This is the one exception. It's sympathetic that causes constriction or dilation of blood vessels. In the case of penile arterials, it's parasympathetic, all right? And the contraction of the urethral smooth muscle to move the sperm through for ejaculation is parasympathetic. However, you can voluntarily contract the ischiocavernosus muscle to increase the sense of orgasm, all right, or movement into orgasm, because these are skeletal muscles. So ischiocavernosus, two of them, and two bulbospongiosus muscles that meet in the middle. I don't know if you remember the term raphe from skeletal muscle in last semester. So we have a connective tissue raphe and partially onto the corpus and covering the bulb, we have the bulbospongiosus muscle. It's actually a branch of the pudendal nerve called the deep perineal nerve, okay? But I'm fine with just the pudendal nerve. So the structures I've drawn up on the board are what we're going to model with clay. Modeling clay works best. Some of you brought Play-Doh when we did the brain. Play-Doh works fine with this, but you're going to have a droopy penis. But they have these bright neon colors that are available, so that kind of makes up for it. Anybody know what this structure is right here?
Is that bad?
Spermatic cord, but that's the round structure. Yeah, this would be the superficial inguinal ring. Okay. So the spermatic cord and testis are separate from penis structures. So the nerves and so on are different nerves. All right, so make sure you don't mix those up. Now, remember that external urethral sphincter we were talking about in relationship to the bulbourethral glands? That's not shown here, but it's just deep to this connective tissue. So I'm going to draw that in a different color. So filling in the angle of the pelvic pubic is this external urethral sphincter. If I draw it without the penis in there, and we have just the opening for the urethra. We don't have a vagina in the male, obviously, so we don't have to include that. Then this muscle kind of fills in this space. And that is the external also known as one right here is called the superficial transverse perineal. You don't need to know that one, okay? And that one's called the deep. It's innervated by the pudendal nerve as well. So if we go back to